Okay, so let's rewind back to July 19th for a sec. Remember that massive IT outage? It seemed like everything went haywire that day.
Oh, yeah. Airlines were grounded. Hospitals were scrambling. I think even direct deposits were affected.
Right, it felt bigger than Y2K. And to think, it all came down to one single software update gone wrong.
And the company behind it all,
CrowdStrike.
CrowdStrike, yeah, they're practically a household name now when it comes to cybersecurity. Their Falcon platform, it's like the go-to digital bodyguard for, well, everyone. Businesses, organizations, even government agencies, they're all relying on CrowdStrike to keep their data safe from those nasty cyber attacks.
Exactly. And we're not talking about some basic antivirus here. This is deep-level stuff. CrowdStrike embeds itself right into a system's core, especially when you're talking about Windows. I mean, they're designed to stop threats before they even have a chance to cause any damage. But, and this is where it gets really interesting, it wasn't some master hacker or some crazy virus that brought them down.
It was their own update.
It was their own update, a seemingly small configuration change that spiraled into this system-wide chaos.
It all comes down to this thing called Channel File 291. Basically, think of it like a software update for their Falcon sensor, the part of the platform that's constantly scanning, looking for anything suspicious.
Right, the eyes and ears of the whole operation.
Exactly. But this particular update, it had a logic error, a flaw in the code, and it caused the sensor to crash. And because CrowdStrike operates at the kernel level of Windows, that's like the deepest level of the operating system, by the way.
The heart of it all.
Yeah, it set off this chain reaction, led to the dreaded blue screen of death on millions of devices.
Ouch. Talk about a system-wide meltdown. I mean, it really makes you realize how deeply integrated CrowdStrike is with the entire Windows ecosystem.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a double-edged sword in a way. On one hand, that deep integration, it gives them incredible visibility and control, which is exactly what you need to stop those threats. But then this incident, this really showed us the potential downside. When something goes wrong at that level, the impact, it's just massive. And it's important to note, this only affected Windows users. If you were on an Apple or a Linux system, you probably had no idea anything was even happening.
Okay, so we've got millions of devices down, businesses freaking out. What did CrowdStrike do? Did they just, apologize and hope for the best?
Well, they did apologize. A lot. But they also took a pretty big hit.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Their stock price, for one.
Yeah.
It plunged almost 30% after the outage.
Ooh, that's gotta hurt.
Yeah, it's a tough lesson. When you're as deeply integrated as CrowdStrike, even a small mistake can have huge consequences.
And we're not just talking about a few computers crashing here. I saw some estimates that this outage cost Fortune 500 companies billions. With a B.
Yeah, $5.4 billion to be exact. So not exactly small potatoes.
So with that kind of fallout, you got to think some customers were ready to jump ship, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But surprisingly, a lot of them, they stuck around, at least initially.
Why is that? You'd think they'd be scrambling for the exits.
Well, think about it. Switching cybersecurity providers isn't like switching your cell phone carrier. These companies, they've built their entire security infrastructure around CrowdStrike.
It's got to be pretty sticky, right? Hard to just rip it all out and start over.
Exactly. Plus, there's the whole legal thing.
Oh, right. I bet there were some lawsuits flying around after that mess.
You better believe it. I mean, we don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of it all, but let's just say it raised some eyebrows. The fact that CrowdStrike had these clauses in their contracts that kind of limited their liability.
So what did they do to stop the bleeding? Aside from, lawyering up.
Transparency was key. Right from the get-go, CrowdStrike, they ummed up to the mistake, they gave regular updates, explained what happened with that channel file issue, and crucially, they took steps to prevent it from happening again. Revamped their whole update process.
Yeah.
More testing, more customer control over the rollout, that sort of thing.
A lesson learned kind of thing.
Exactly. They basically said, look, this was bad, we messed up, but here's how we're going to make sure it never happens again.
All right, so damage control, transparency, it's all well and good. But what about the bottom line? Did they actually lose money on this whole thing?
Well, their second quarter financials were, they were interesting, to say the least.
Interesting how? Spill the tea.
Well, they had about $60 million in deals that got delayed because of the outage. Customers hitting the pause button. You know how it goes.
Yikes. That's got to sting a bit.
Yeah, but here's the kicker. Even with those delays, they still raked in over $963 million in revenue for the quarter.
Wait, hold up. They exceeded revenue expectations after that mess.
Yep. It goes to show The demand for cybersecurity, it's not going anywhere. If anything, this whole thing probably scared even more companies into upping their security game.
Makes sense. When you see the cost of downtime firsthand like that, you definitely start prioritizing security.
Exactly. And it really speaks to the strength of CrowdStrike's, I guess you could say, their ecosystem. They've got these big enterprise customers, right?
Yeah.
Deeply integrated with their systems. And those relationships, they're not so easy to break.
Right. It's not like switching to a different brand of coffee. This is serious stuff.
Exactly. So even though they had this misstep, they're still raking in cash. But the big question now is, what does the future hold? Can they bounce back from this, or are they like permanently tainted?
Yeah. Is this a flesh wound or a fatal blow?
Well, some analysts, they're hitting that sell button hard. They're saying this is it, the beginning of the end. Competitors are going to swoop in and steal all their customers, and CrowdStrike will become, well, yesterday's news.
And then there are those who see this as the perfect time to buy low, hoping for a comeback story.
Exactly. So who's right? It's tough to say. But here's the thing. CrowdStrike, they're still aiming high. Remember that goal they had? Reaching $10 billion in annual recurring revenue by 2031? They're sticking to it.
Wow, talk about confidence.
Right. They're doubling down on growth, expanding into new areas, like protecting those AI workloads that everyone's buzzing about. Plus, they're going all in on keeping their current customers happy. Which brings us to Falcon Flex.
Ah, yes, their new strategy. So what's the deal with Falcon Flex? Explain it like I'm 5.
Okay, so imagine it like this. You can subscribe to all of CrowdStrike, every single product, every feature, but you only pay for what you use. And you can change it up whenever you want.
So like cybersecurity a la carte.
Exactly. Need more protection in one area? Boom, crank it up. Things slow down, need to scale back, no problem, dial it down. No more getting locked into huge contracts for stuff you don't even need.
Pretty smart. Give the people what they want when they want it. Flexibility is key these days.
And that seems to be CrowdStrike's whole game plan now. Give customers more control, more value, and hopefully build back that trust they lost.
So it's like, yeah, they stumbled, but they're using it as a chance to improve, to innovate, and to really listen to what their customers want.
Exactly. Whether it'll be enough to fully recover to reach those ambitious goals, well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. But one thing's for sure, this whole saga just highlights how crucial cybersecurity is. I mean, we rely on these systems for everything. Our banking, our healthcare, even just grabbing a coffee. It all runs on technology that needs protecting.
Couldn't agree more. And as we rely on these systems more and more, the stakes just keep getting higher.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive into the wild world of CrowdStrike. We covered a lot of ground, but hopefully it gives you something to think about.
Absolutely. It'll be fascinating to see how this all plays out for CrowdStrike. Will they regain that lost trust? Will they hit those ambitious goals? Only time will tell. But here's something to chew on in the meantime. How much of their success hinges on their technology versus their reputation? It's a question worth pondering.